Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment of our program is brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. If you're wanting to get away from home but still looking for some solitude and seclusion, pick the cabin of your dreams in the Smoky Mountains. Just visit parksidecabinrentals.com. Check out all their many different layouts. There are all kinds of amenities located in different, some are creekside, some are just up in the mountains. Wherever you stay, you get free parking in downtown Gatlinburg. Parkside Cabin Rentals, the Ogle family's been doing it since the national park opened. They know what they're doing. They'll take good care of you. ParksideCabinRentals.com. All right, want to welcome in a man we haven't seen since August down here. Football season's over. It's good to get our recruiting guy back and other topics. Yep. Ryan Callahan from GoVols247.com. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me back.
It's good to have you here. Let's weigh in on this, and I'll force you to talk a lot, just to make up for old time.
All right.
We talked earlier in this show about Tennessee's football program. In my view, it's kind of been put into a medically induced coma at the moment. They've just paused it. What impact is that having on the remainder of the 2021 class? I mean, usually with the early signing period moving to December, a lot of guys get most of their stuff done up front, but there's usually something that trickles in. Has the trickle stopped at Tennessee, or is there still some hope?
So the interesting thing about this is Tennessee's approach from the start seemed to indicate they weren't going to do much with the 2021 class after the early signing period anyway. So it makes it tougher to assess just how much this has hurt things. You have to look more to the 2022 class to really get a feel for that. But they are in on a highly ranked defensive lineman, Tywan Malone, in the 2021 class. He'd be one of the few guys left on the board. They are still actively recruiting. And it looks like they're fading a little bit in that one, as you might expect under these circumstances. So I do think it's affected Tennessee, but again, hard to quantify with these guys going down the stretch, getting ready to sign, because there just aren't many of them out there that Tennessee seems to be involved with. And frankly, I think their plan, even on early sign day, might have been to take 6 transfers with their remaining spots and just be done.
And by the way, I know what we're going to get. I always get 1 or 2 a week from talking about this. Somebody's going to email me and say, why are you talking about this? By talking about it, you're hurting recruiting. There's a simple answer to that. If UT wanted to tell us we're wrong, they would put out a statement saying Jeremy Pruitt's our football coach. But they aren't. They haven't. It's not there. So there's that. Ryan, second question. Tennessee needs to make a splash in the transfer market. Right now it's a drain in the other direction for the most part. They need to make a splash there and replenish the roster. They did get a kid this week, quarterback from Virginia Tech, Hendon Hooker. Thoughts on him?
Honestly, I think this is a really good pickup under the circumstances. A lot of people might be surprised that it's happening right now because of that. He looked like one of the best quarterbacks out there on the transfer market. It's the type of guy I think Tennessee would have loved to have had last year. You throw in the fact that he's a running quarterback, a dual threat guy. You add a guy like him and Caden Salter, the highly ranked signee coming in. Both of those guys can run. So this gives you a different dimension for the offense and a lot of experience. He's a guy who's been Virginia Tech's starter for most of the past 2 years. So this is a guy they really could have used to throw into the competition with Jarrett Garantano last year. Just weren't able to get it. This year they get it, and now it's a different looking quarterback room with that kind of athleticism coming in. So I think it's a big deal, and honestly, a really nice pickup that I wasn't sure they would be able to get that type of guy under these circumstances.
Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned the quarterback room. This is a question for all three of you here. J.T. Shroud, as you know, is going to Colorado. Jarrett Garantano announced yesterday he's going to Washington State. You've got Salter coming in, Hooker coming in, Maurer still on the team at the moment, though his name has been mixed up in this investigation thing. Harrison Bailey, we'll get to him and his father's Twitter account in the next segment. But your quarterback room, do you look at it and say the outlook is better this year than it was last year? And I'm talking about what the outlook was last year. I'm not talking about what it turned into, but is the outlook for the quarterback room right now better than the outlook for the quarterback room at this time a year ago?
On paper, no. But the pure sort of output rather than outlook, they set the bar pretty low.
Could be, yeah.
In 2020.
Yeah.
So, there's only one way to go, which is slightly down or up.
Yeah.
But I think, they've got a chance. I think, Ryan mentioned it with Caden Salter, Hendon Hooker. You have to wonder if this offense isn't going to look remarkably more, different than it did last year. Those two guys, not to compare them to him, but they are more in the style of Josh Dobbs, being able to run around, feature that a little bit more. And we haven't really seen that at all. I mean, goodness, since Pruitt's been here, how many called runs for quarterbacks have we seen that didn't involve Brian Maurer? It might be single digits. So, you see that more. We'll see. At least get the read option game going. I think it'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting to see how Jim Chaney uses him, because Jim Chaney's
Yes.
history is more with a passing downfield attack.
Yes.
Jimmy, you've made it clear this offseason that goal number one, you have to have a much better quarterback, play if he's going to survive next year, which doubtful at this point anyway, but a much better quarterback play. Do you feel better about the quarterback room now than you did a year ago?
Well, I got to tell myself, I was one of those that bought in that Garantano would have a better year this past year because he was in the second year under Jim Chaney. That didn't happen. So if I'm given the perspective of looking back and acknowledging I was incorrect about that, I like the potential of this group. As has been mentioned, quarterback from Virginia Tech coming in, he had 2 games in which I think he ran for at least 150 yards. He's got 1,000 career rushing yards. I like Caden Salter a lot based on what I've seen on film and from talking to other people. Bailey's got some games under his belt. I think that the quarterback room, to me, looks pretty good, and I think you will see better production from that position this year than we saw last year.
The trouble is it's so difficult to watch. I mean, if you go back and watch Jarrett Garantano's high school tape, you're sitting there going, oh, man, he's a dual-threat guy. It's hard to weigh any of them. I mean, a year ago we were all sitting here, fans were saying, Harrison Bailey, 5-star, he's going to step right in there. Okay, he played, and I didn't think he was bad. I thought there's room to grow, but as a freshman, you need to go back to Josh Dobbs. There were people that didn't like what they saw out of him as a freshman. So to have somebody to come in and hit the ground running, you may be better off getting this transfer from Virginia Tech as opposed to counting on Caden Salter, if that's what you're looking for. Your thoughts on the quarterback room? Is it better off, or how much better off is it than what we got last year, in your opinion?
I think for what Tennessee has on this roster, it may be quite a bit. The thing to me is when you're taking a 3-17 that struggled on offense and trying to fix it, the quickest way to do that is with a quarterback who can run around and make some things happen. We've seen that in the past with Josh Dobbs. That's how one of the reasons Tennessee was able to turn around pretty quickly under Butch Jones there in 2014. So I do think that gives them some upside they didn't have this year, simply just having that running threat if they use it that way. You mentioned Jim Chaney too. Remember, he had Justin Fields at Georgia and at least mixed him in as a part-time sort of run first quarterback his freshman year. I wonder if Harrison Bailey is the starter, does having a couple guys like Salter and Hooker give them the option of using one of those guys in a part-time type of role to mix that in. So Chaney's at least done that in the past, but you're right, having a guy like that as a starter would be a first for Chaney in a way.
When we come back, I want to ask you very quickly about the 2022 class, but also Harrison Bailey's father made the mistake of tweeting something about Jeremy Pruitt and the UT situation this week, and that got fall Twitter on him. How big of an issue is that? How commonplace, how big of an issue is it? Is it bad as it seems? We'll ask Mr. Recruiting Guru down here about that. Come on back on the Sports Source.